it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on an awesome viewer question that is to discuss why it is so difficult to leave ways or make sense of a relationship with a female psychopath. You know, a relationship that's really gotten the best of them. And, found that this is different than most other relationships, and it's left them somewhat impaired, somewhat difficult to move on, somewhat difficult to process this relationship. So oftentimes things in relationships with a female psychopath just do not make sense. Something seems awry, something is off, something is extreme, something doesn't quite commute. So oftentimes there is a disconnect in the channel or communication of the relationship. We are talking about relationship difficulties. We are talking about relationship impairments, whether they be in romance, family, love, marriage, work, your community, what have you. We're talking about an individual oftentimes who is very charming, very strong, very passionate, very much what you might call a leader, someone who is very assertive, aggressive, a go-getter, someone with high energy, someone who is at the top of their ranks, the top of their game, on their A game, a perfect 10, a one and only, the answer to your prayers, I need to look no further. So sometimes there is an immediate click between, you and a female psychopath. It is important to understand that this is not your typical Sally. This is, even though from the outside, the appearance may be as if they might be extremely attractive or have what you might consider a sex appeal, an emotional glue. You find yourself glued to them, transfixed, mesmerized, otherwise known as hypnotized. Hypnotic stare, the psychopathic gaze, the reptilian gaze that sort of paralyzes their victim, that really denotes a feeling of sexual conquest and sexual pleasure. And oftentimes that can flip from the very hot to the very cold. The cold, the isolating, the life-threatening, the intimidation, the life or death sort of feeling of misunderstanding, not knowing where you stand. Where is your shelter going to be? Where is your next love going to come from? What is happening to your nucleus? What is happening to your family? What is happening to your business? What is happening to you? You find yourself sort of in, almost like, an emotional thunderstorm or emotional sort of volcanic-like situation when you see things erupt and things do feel out of control around you. Realize that a female psychopath is an intra-species predator and, very much operates by a mask or a facade. They play as if, they appear as if, they come across as if. So they have a marching order, they have a game plan, they have an agenda. This is already there on the scene before you arrived, before you showed up. It is like a psychopathic game plan that has an insatiable need for power and control, meaning, sometimes greed, sometimes sexual conquest, sometimes dominating a business, dominating a family, dominating and deceiving a marriage, dominating and deceiving what have you, wherever you find yourself in them. In other words, they come on very strong. And so to speak to this member's question, why is it so difficult to process and make sense? You must understand a couple very important working adjectives and principles that are at play specifically in this type of relationship, otherwise known as a red flag that you do not see. You do not have your glasses to understand or see what is happening while it is occurring. So you are unable to identify and see this game plan. It's, in other words, like getting onto a soccer field and not knowing the game plan or the plays or moves of the other team. You know, you've never played them before. You might have played other teams. You kind of think that they're normal. Oh, this is what they do. But they have another game book that they're piecing through, and then they are working on, namely that of being opportunistic. If you are involved with a female psychopath, you must understand what opportunistic means. A female psychopath is highly opportunistic, meaning they will exploit or take advantage of chances offered by immediate circumstances. In other words, they'll take advantage of especially chances offered by immediate circumstances without reference to a general plan or sort of a moral principle. So, you know, jumping at an opportunity, going for the gusto. Oh, doesn't this seem like a good idea? And then here comes the pounce. Here comes the fangs. Here comes the venom that sort of paralyzes the prey, and then all of a sudden you find you are in an opportunistic relationship where you feel you have been numbed out, made powerless, rendered ineffective, or unable to respond and manage the situation. The female psychopath, as Dr. Robert Hare says, is an intra-species predator. You can read the books of Dr. Robert Hare. You can read the Robert Hare checklist. He is a pioneer in the field. I believe he hails from Wisconsin. You can check him out. Thank goodness for the leaders in this area. And I think he found himself in a situation where he was a young psychologist in a prison and found himself very much at the disadvantage of opportunistic prisoners. So they pulled one over on him, got him good, got his willy-nilly, pulled one over on him. You know, this is serious. This is where you might find yourself in not understanding the degree of wrath or understanding why it is so difficult to overcome a person who is of this caliber or of this nature. Namely, you know, that of especially so I want to quickly, we can understand that and we'll unpack that in a moment. But I think for our viewer to understand, and I think this is crucial, why is it so difficult for people to leave an abusive relationship? Whether it's domestic abuse, financial abuse, cheating, what have you. And I think, you know, because I think it does sort of, mystify a lot of people. And I was pondering on this, and I really do think, especially for those people who have a high degree of empathy, which means they're able to feel, check in with, resonate, and support the feelings, wishes, and needs those of an other as if they were their own. So they take on others inside. They bring them in to their heart, their gut, their mind, their spirit. We're talking people of extreme empathy or empathy. So you must understand that of empathy as well in what this means for you as a human being. So part of the psychological composite of the neurons in your brain are the mirror neurons that, you know, are able for you to sort of connect with another person. Mirror them, if you will, and enable them to understand their feelings, needs, wishes, what they're going through, and sort of have a connection. Oh, I get it. You know, this was difficult here. You got stuck there. You're having a struggle there. So you're able to connect. Okay. So empathy is being able to understand the feelings, needs, wishes of another. So, and likewise, when you feel understood, you know, people are then exhibiting empathy. And so oftentimes people feel misunderstood by these individuals because they are lacking in empathy. It's not that you're a poor communicator. It's not that you're difficult to understand. It's not that you're not making sense. It's not that you're having a psychotic breakdown. It's that if you are trying to communicate with someone with a lack of empathy, you know, they're going to misconstrue and not understand where you're coming from because they don't have the hardware, they don't have the operating system to parallel it to a computer, which, in other words, they don't have the tools. They don't have the, heater in the engine. They don't have a fuel pump, rigged up in there. There ain't no fuel pump. There ain't no fuel going. There ain't no engine turning, and there ain't no wheels turning. You are not going to get traction relating with this individual who has a lack of empathy. When you're dealing with a female psychopath, we are talking about a preponderance or an experience in the general population. Unlike, Dr. Robert Hare, the population that he studied was incarcerated, i.e. generally male. Men are generally those folks who commit more of the violent acts, the aggressive acts that break the law, that find themselves in incarcerated situations. Whether it be, crimes of passion, crimes of this, crimes of white-collar crimes, whatever it is. I mean, this is a huge topic, y'all. So anyway, we are trying to get back to our viewer question. I mean, there's just so much to talk about and to digest and understand as it relates to you and then what you see in your life. So anyway, understanding what is opportunistic and what is empathy. So if you are one of empathy, oftentimes one does not want to reject or hurt another because, especially if they have been hurt before, they're highly acute and sensitive what it means to be rejected. So they would not want to incur this hurt unto another. So hence the shutting down. I would not want to reject. I would not want to hurt because I know how bad that hurts. And so I want to have an open heart and be open emotionally for this abuser. So they don't want to define them as they are. They have a difficulty or inability to see things as they are because it's too painful, because to see things as they really are would mean to be, oftentimes they would lose their shelter, they would lose their house, they would lose their food, they would lose their parent, they would lose their spouse, they would lose their sibling, they would lose their job, they would lose their livelihood. So oftentimes to see things as they are, it's like getting a lesson before you're emotionally ready. It's like you're a 5-year-old and someone is trying to slap down a calculus book, and for you to go, yep, we're having a pop quiz for you. First day of kindergarten. What is the square root of the hypothesis of the power of the 10th of x over 3? And so that you cannot compute that. So the child is then exploited or taken advantage of. In other words, you are not knowing, you are not aware, you are not seeing, understanding what is going on. You are a person of empathy. And when you are dealing with a female psychopath, I would say one of the core components, the nuggets, is opportunistic individuals. And understanding how you as a person of empathy are then open and receptive and oftentimes reinforcing of exploitation of yourself. In other words, you begin to welcome and reinforce the exploitation and you don't know that it is happening. So the empathy, so in other words, people then develop a very high tolerance to emotional pain. They will undergo suffering. In other words, emotional pain, and endure opportunistic or mistreatment by these individuals in order to keep their status quo. In other words, because otherwise to do so would mean perilous or dangerous consequences. In other words, you will not be able to self-sustain. You will not be able to manage. You will not be able to live. And so you must understand the female psychopath, which is absence of conscience and an absence of morality, and they have no sense of remorse or regret. So these are psychological states, spiritual states, philosophical states, whatever you might want to call it in your native language, that they do not experience. Remember, there is no heater under the hood. There is no fuel pump of empathy. There is no brakes on the boundaries. So you have to really understand that you are really dealing with something different, even though they might have this great degree of appeal. Sexual appeal, emotional appeal, passionate, like sweeping people up right away. They, come in like a storm. And they are opportunistic. You must understand what opportunistic means and how this manifests in your life. To be opportunistic is someone who is exploiting the chances offered by immediate circumstances without reference to a general plan or moral principle. So if you do not have a general plan or you don't have a moral principle that you are acutely aware of and in touch with and able to have that and reinforce that and enforce that like a law within yourself, you'll find yourself swept up very quickly. In other words, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. These are the very quick, blindsiding sort of individuals that swoop in and sort of get you by the jugular, get you by, the cat is grabbing you by the collar. But just because they have grabbed you doesn't mean that you cannot liberate yourself. So also realize that, how does this equate and parallel to the plant kingdom? So you can have an opportunistic weed that is able to take advantage of a previously unexploited or open area. So like a weed that's just like growing in, you have, in ecology, you have a similar pattern. So if you can understand that, or in medicine, it's how a virus can, exploit and take advantage of a host and sort of go into their, that habitat and then exploit it and then take advantage of the resources and then sort of demolish the resources, deplete the resources for their own gain. So they take that as a life source. They take it to live upon, but the problem is that it depletes the host and oftentimes annihilates or negates the host. This is opportunistic individuals who come in at the opportune time, who take advantage, who push you over, who take advantage of your good side. And exploitation and opportunistic behavior oftentimes is masked by the sob story. It is masked by something. In other words, they are filling a void for you. So they come on usually with a sob story. Oh, I've had such a hard time. Oh, I broke my arm. Oh, this and this. Using these sort of ploys to their advantage. Pulling out the this card, pulling out the that card in order to get people to reduce their guard and oftentimes open themselves to be exploited. So you must understand also what does it mean to be exploited and why it is so difficult to let go of this relationship, because oftentimes there's this degree of empathy, which you don't want to hurt this person because part of you identifies with that sort of sob story individual, or what that hurt part that they usually will lay that foundation for you and encrust in sort of like a piece of wood that goes in underneath your foundation and then alters it like a plate tectonic. They go in underneath your foundation and they create a corrupt foundation and then cause it leverage and imbalance so it breaks apart, and then you no longer have that foundation of I am. We're talking about exploitation and we're talking about some emotional energetic movement. and the topic of foundation, which is yourself, your principles, and who you are, and then also what will break you down, i.e. push your buttons, i.e. get you to act, fall for, succumb, or fall into the hands or trap thereof. So this is not good. Finding yourself in a trap oftentimes is unliberating and unempowering. Hence the channel. So people find themselves sort of in a very difficult circumstance where they are taken advantage of and cannot get power or control or have, diminutive power over something. They feel that they are overruled, overrun, overwhelmed, and unable to think for themselves. This is being immersed in the fight or flight. So you must understand your own self and how you work. Plato, know yourself. So you must understand some basics. I don't think, they don't really teach you this in school, or at least a lot of schools, but you have a fight or flight mechanism, which will be reactive, which will fight for your life. So that is reactive. It is not responsive. It's an automatic, autonomic process, just like a reflex. When you go to the doctor and they go, hey, we're going to check your reflexes. Bam, they take a hammer and hit under your knee. Your leg goes flying up. That is a reflex. So the understanding that your fight or flight is very much like a reflex. So it is my feeling that they exploit this. So you must understand that what is exploitation of an opportunistic individual? Exploitation means to make use of a situation or treating others unfairly in order to gain an advantage or benefit. So to gain an advantage or benefit, there is an agenda. What do they want? Do they want a back scratch? Do they want you to do this? Do they want you to fall in love with them? Do they want your bank account? Do they want you to, have their child? Do they want you to pay their house bill? Do they want you to retire them? Do they want you to buy them a car? Do they want you to? So there's usually this sort of, you are a resource, hence the term supply. We talk about that in understanding the dynamic, the narcissist, and then the others are the supply, like a resource, as if you need supplies, office supplies. I need something to do. So they need other people to do their job. This is a psychopath will tell you, admittedly, and their psychopath tells that they, quote, need people. So it's very interesting how this sort of threads together and why it's so difficult to, leave them. So there's this exploitation where they make use of a situation or treat others unfairly to, gain an advantage or a benefit. So if they can render you helpless, if they can take advantage, and this is usually where they're taking advantage of somebody's weakness or their vulnerability, like the child who's getting slapped the calculus book, that is exploiting a child. So we see parallels in other areas. So just so you can kind of understand a parallel, there's exploitation of resources. It's the old, the first one here, wins this, take it all. I'm the first one here to this gold mine, so it's all mine. This sort of and then quickly, take all the water, take all the gold, take all the lumber, take all the whatever it is, just this exploitation, like we hear about the fires in Brazil, or where they're saying, well, yeah, we need to have a cattle-based economy here where we normally have a rainforest. So they're trying to flip around what nature had designed. They're exploiting the resources. They're throwing the ecology out of balance, throwing in plumes of smoke, which are then throwing off the carbon emissions. And, this whole, global, crisis of, weather change patterns and global warming. So in other words, this is the consequence of exploitation. In other words, opportunistic behavior. So you can see on a macro as well as a micro level that this is, we're not making this stuff up. You must understand the working aspects, these working mechanisms in relationships when you're coming, and why is it so difficult to leave this relationship? Oftentimes people, because in the beginning of a love bombing, there was a sort of nonverbal commitment, oftentimes which is not thought through, worked through. It is a reactive or reflexive relationship, just like the knee jerk reaction when when your physician hits your knee. Oh, let's touch your reflexes. Is very much like that. It's a reflex. So it's an automatic process, I would say, in the beginning of the coming together, where there is this exploitation and a disadvantage, where they are making you, so a psychopath, because of their psychological makeup, they're able to sort of size up situations very quickly, very well. In other words, oh yeah, this is the person in business. So for example, this is the guy, this is the office, the office rock star. This is the office rock star, the top sales guy. Go after him to be buddies. This is the other. Then you become friends over here, or don't. So they're able to really see through certain social norms. They're without a conscience. A female psychopath sort of does not see a barricade or a boundary where there is one. They sort of see right through it. It does not apply to them. No, we don't do that. So you declare a boundary, you declare a value, you declare a statement, and you put it out there. And then to this female psychopath, that doesn't apply to me. They see right through it. In other words, they want to blaze right through it. They want to bypass your boundary, i.e. your I am. And then people with empathy, they have sort of a reaction formation, if you will, where they don't want to hurt this person then who they love and who is this perfect fit. So in other words, they have this idealized version, and then they connect the idealized life of their own with them, and then don't want to then ruin their own ideal. So, but your own ideal is within, it is not within this person. So you have to sort of put on your glasses, and especially if those who have been hurt before or have a sort of unsteady or volatile sense of identity or I am, but they're not super secure in themselves, then these people are like low-hanging fruit. They're just, a big fat cherry hanging 1 foot off the ground, to a hungry squirrel. Oh my gosh, look what I just found. And so they just latch onto you, like whatever onto whatever, like white on rice or whatever they say. They just go womp. They see through things. So they kind of work that person. They work the system. They are exploitative. They get in and they just know, they're the people in business who go, oh wow, yeah, Johnny's leaving in a month. Oh my God, isn't this his big enrollment time? Just are you kidding? Well, why don't we just keep great customer service? And wouldn't it be better if we change up our approach? And why don't I just go in there as the and we're going in there early and we're serving cookies and Kool-Aid, and then it's going to be much better. And then why don't I just take over all this? Because so-and-so and so-and-so is this and this and that. And by the way, And then, so they gather all this information so they have their playbook ready to go. These are like your seasoned predators. This is the lion of the jungle. These are the people who know just what tracks to make. They know the runs that the gazelles do. They know when the gazelles have their babies. They know when the herd is this and then this is down, and when to swoop in to go in under the foundation of that, herd and go yank. Wouldn't it be good if I just got this? And then they're just like, they come out the winner. These are your intra-species predators though. So they are amongst the herd. They are amongst your kin. They are amongst your kind. They are on your everyday walk. They are in your day, for any walk of life that you have. And so they will make use of a situation, but to treat others unfairly is part of the package to take advantage. So just like, there's exploitation in labor. So for example, a 6-year-old, hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to have a place to live. You're not going to have a place to eat. You're not going to have a place to be warm. So you better sew these 20 pairs of jeans before noon, or you're not going to get your this and this. So that is exploitation. A poor child, of course, who cannot feed, clothe, bathe, shelter themselves is just going to have to be like, well, I guess this has got to do. I'm going to go ahead and learn to sew up these 20 pairs of jeans before noon so I can get a bowl of rice and so I have a bed and a pillow later in the day. That's all. They don't think that, but they do that. See, a child is not yet developed, or the subconscious mind is not conscious. It is not verbal. It is not, so just like when you're on a computer, you don't see the hard drive going, exit files, change to this, code. You don't see all that going on. It's all the code going on. So this is why it's so difficult. It's all embedded in the subconscious. So that's where you have to do the healing work, and we'll get there on the next video. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace in, peace out, peace be with you. Have a beautiful day.